All right, so Nehemiah chapter number 13. On the day they read in the book of Moses in the audience of the people, and therein was found written that the Ammonite and the Moabite should not come into the congregation of God forever, because they met not the children of Israel with bread and with water, but hired Balaam against them, that he should curse them. Howbeit our God turned the curse into a blessing. Now it came to pass, when they had heard the law, that they separated from Israel all the mixed multitude. And before this, Eliashib the priest, having the oversight of the chamber of the house of our God, was allied unto Tobiah. That's a very interesting term right there. He was allied unto Tobiah. Verse number 5, and he prepared for him a great chamber, where aforetime they laid the meat offerings, the frankincense, and the vessels, and the tithes of the corn, the new wine, the oil, which was commanded to be given to the Levites, and the singers, and the porters, and the offerings of the priests. But in all this time was not I at Jerusalem. For in the 32nd year of Xerxes, that's who he is, king of Babylon, came I unto the king, and after certain days obtained I leave of the king. I came to Jerusalem, and understood of the evil that Eliashib did for Tobiah, and preparing him a chamber in the courts of the house of God. And it grieved me sore. Therefore I cast forth all the household stuff of Tobiah out of the chamber. Tossed it right out. Okay? Verse number 9. Then I commanded, and they cleansed the chambers, and thither brought I again the vessels of the house of God, and with the meat offering and frankincense. And it says, keep on reading in verse number 10. And I perceived that the portions of the Levites had been given to them, had not been given them, for the Levites and the singers that did the work were fled every one to his field. They're fed together, they had to go to their own field. Then contended I with the rulers and said, why is the house of God forsaken? And I gathered them together and set them in their place. I'm reading this passage, and immediately I started thinking about, people were forsaking the house of God. For whatever reason, people didn't think that church attendance was all that important. They didn't see that the things of dealing with the church of God was all that necessary. And they just kind of up and left, and poof, there went with the smoke. And you look around and you say, well, where did everybody go? I think of people who come on Sunday mornings only. They only come on Sunday mornings. Well, where are they for the rest of the services? Do we not have a Sunday night service? Do we not have a Sunday school? Do we not have a midweek a midweek prayer and Bible time? Do we not have more services than just Sunday morning? And you see that the house of God is being forsaken, and other things are creeping up into their life. And you see this passage going on. But what really I found interesting is back there in verse number 4. It says, and before this, Eliashib the priest, having the oversight of the chamber of the house of our God, was allied unto Tobiah. Who is Tobiah? Now, if you know anything about the Bible through Nehemiah, there's two men that caused the most trouble to Nehemiah in rebuilding the wall. And there's two men, and one was called Sanballat, the other was called Tobiah. And we're going to go through their life and through Nehemiah and find out what they did so bad that was so evil. Now, wouldn't you think it's a bad thing if somebody wanted to come to church and we tossed them out on their ear? You say, well, there's got to be more history to this. What happened? I remember when I was upstate New York, I was pastoring, we actually physically removed a man from our services because he was living in open, defiant sin against God. I mean, open, defiant, I dare you to strike me dead, God, type sin in his life. And we would not start service till he was out the door. We physically escorted him out of the building. And we threw him out on his ear. And it was like, well, that's not loving. The Bible says some people ought not be in the house of God. Some people ought not be in there. Right. But it says, I found this interesting. So all this is going on. But look what it says in verse number 5. He prepared for him a great chamber, where before this time, they laid the meat offerings, the frankincense, and the vessels, and the tithes of the corn and new wine, and the oil, which was commanded to be to the Levites. This guy lived in the storehouse. This guy was up in the treasury. This guy was around. Instead of where the offerings of God were being put, they were giving more preference to this man than to the things of God. And they put the things of God somewhere else, and they tucked it away somewhere else. But no, this guy had the chamber of the storehouse. This guy had a special chamber, and it was all to himself. But he allowed him, and that's wrong. Look, we ought go to second. Let me think. That might be 3 John. Let me check real quick. I think it's 2 John. Not too long ago, we had a guy come to our church. And he came in, and he was all fine and dandy coming to church, but he had to have the entire everything. Everything was about him. He was all about, look at me. I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna control the conversation. I'm gonna do this. And when it came time, the spotlight was off of him. He got up and left. You remember that? He kind of got up and left. Look at 3 John. I want to read this to you here. Verse number 9. 3 John 9. I wrote unto the church, but Diotrephes, who loveth to have the preeminence among them, receiveth us not. I wrote a letter, and I was like, hey, I was trying to write to you, but this guy named Diotrephes, who loveth to have the preeminence among them, receiveth us not. He says, wherefore if I come, I will remember his deeds which he doeth, prating against us with malicious words, and not content therewith, neither doth he himself receive the brethren, and forbiddeth them that would, and casteth them out of the church. This guy's holding himself up like he's the authority of the church. It's all about him. When I was reading this passage, when I was reading in Nehemiah, the only thing I could think about Sanballat or about Tobiah was this guy Diotrephes. This guy sets him up in the church. There's no room for anybody but me. I'm the head honcho. I'm going to kick anybody out of the church who disagrees with me. I speak against people with malicious words. It's my way, the highway. Nobody can fellowship unless I approve. Just Diotrephes. The Bible says he loved to have the preeminence. But the problem is, the Bible says in Colossians that only one person receives a preeminence, and who is that? Jesus Christ. All right? That in all things he might have the preeminence. So this guy Diotrephes set himself up like he was all the greatest, and kicked out anybody out of the church. But here we find this guy, he got kicked out of the church.